What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? Welcome to the Skulls and Knives podcast. Some quick little things just to get us started. Make sure you check out the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, YouTube, on all those platforms. Like, subscribe, rate, anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. We're going to do a drawing for the sticker on people who shared at the end of this pod. Then let's see. Also, so if you share the pod in any way, shape, or form, make sure you tag us, and you'll get put in the drawing for a free sticker. Another way you can support other than sharing the pod is go to anchor.fm/skulls-and-knives. Click the support tab. If you donate $1, it'll get you in our private Facebook group. If you donate $5, it'll get you in the group and get you a sticker. And if you donate $10 per month, it'll get you the group, sticker, a shirt, and extra little goodies that we have yet to come up with, but we're going to make some fun goodie stuff. That's why I'm echoing. All right, I shouldn't echo anymore. So this is Fuck You Dad episode 2 with my dad, Jason Robinson. What's up, dude?
What's up?
Nothing much. I'm here doing the pod and drinking coffee. What are you smoking? I know you're smoking a cigar. What are you smoking?
It's a Nicaraguan.
Oh, yeah.
It's from, I think this was a gift from somebody because I don't recognize it. So thank you to whoever gave me this beautiful handmade Nicaraguan cigar.
Ooh, shit. He's busting it out for the pod, guys. And what you drinking?
A little bit of scotch. Some Islay scotch.
Is that the stuff that I tried? Or the special thing in the bottle?
This is Brook Laddie.
Brook Laddie?
Brook Laddie.
Brook Laddie.
It's good stuff, man.
Yeah? Yeah, I tried it. I think it was a little, what is it, peaty? What is that? Is that the word for it? For my taste?
Yeah, this is probably a little on the peaty side, but it really has a lot of the sea salt flavors that come out once you kind of get into it a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's what I like about it. It's not very smoky. So I really like it. Feel like it's pretty nicely balanced Islay scotch.
Nice. Yeah, bartenders and alcohol enthusiasts are gonna shoot me for this, but I like the Dewar's White Label, their blended one.
Yeah. I
really like that one. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it's, as some people would say, is blended crap, but I like it. It's really good.
So I used to have a bunch of dudes I hung out with, and this was like right when IPAs were really getting super popular, 2010, 11, 12, 13, like in that time frame, maybe a little after that too. And there was like this competition to be as hoppy as possible, and just incredibly difficult to drink, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. And I tried so hard to like be a connoisseur of good IPAs, and finally I decided I'm just going to drink what I like, and it doesn't matter if it's Miller Lite and everybody else is drinking some kind of crazy IPA. I'm enjoying myself more than if I was trying to force myself to like something that I don't. So I kind of have come to the resolution that if you like it, do it. So if you like a certain scotch, or you like a certain whiskey, or take your pick as far as alcohol goes, then stick to that and drink it. And if you like a certain cigar, then go for that. There's a brand of cigars called Kick Ass, and they're like dipped in molasses, and they cost like $1.50 a piece, and they're super cheap, but I love the hell out of those things. And so I kind of came.
You love the hell out of those?
Oh, they're good. They're so good.
Dude, Kick Ass is like smoking an acid.
but it's better because it's made from people somewhere in Kentucky.
Well, that is true. That's definitely What'd you say?
But no, I was just gonna make a joke about dudes on crotch rockets, but
yeah, well,
but for real, it's funny because it's like nobody else likes those things, but I do. So
yeah, well, someone's gotta love it if it's selling well and it's everywhere. So
very true.
yeah, I was more. I don't know. For cigars, I like more like I'm not in the super harsh cigars. Like I like a lot of what my father has because it's all pretty mellow, but I do like it to be smooth. I like creamy cigars, but I'm not too big of a fan of the sweet. I want it more like I want it almost like putting like heavy cream in like a super nice black coffee, where it's still super bitter, but you get that creaminess in there. That's kind of what I like. But with beer, I love IPA. I don't love all IPA. There's a lot of garbage, like you said. There's a lot of people who just try and make it as bitter as possible. But I'm an IPA guy, and then I'm not too big on the sweets. I think that's probably like for as many common interests as we have, we always like whatever interest it is. There's always some difference between the two of us where we take like these alternating stance on it. So like you like the sweet cigar, and granted you are also a connoisseur, so you like the more expensive, harsher stuff too, but like when you're going to sit down and prefer a cigar and pick it out for yourself, you're not always going to look for like, oh, let's look at the most expensive cigar and appreciate all these notes that I'm getting. You like, man, I like sweet,
right?
Or like with your beers, like when we went on that beer tour when I was 21, you like loved all the fruity beers, and I was like, dude, just drink these. I don't want them at all.
You're like, it's so gross.
Yeah, I'm like, what's all this sour crap?
Right, I was gonna say I like sours. Sometimes but sours are like IPAs. They almost try to make them too sour. It's like a competition to make it not drinkable.
Who can make the least drinkable beer?
There's something to be said about just enjoying it. It doesn't have to be a competition, but I get it at the same time. There's always everyone's trying to up their game and up their brand and be the next best thing, and there's probably some monetary value in the high IBUs or in high alcohol content or whatever it is. You can say you're the hoppiest or the citrusist. That's not a word, but you know what I'm saying. And,
yeah.
Or whatever, and I guess I'm more like, look, if I'm gonna sit down and have a few beers with friends and smoke a couple cigars or a cigar or two, whatever it is, I want to enjoy it. I don't want it to be something that I regret later. So, and everybody's different. So some people love those IPAs and they're just gonna dig into them and get all crazy, and that's awesome. That's just not for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think so when I'm going to sit and drink around with friends, I'm usually still like kind of trying to be a show off, so I'll pick something like real artisan or some shit.
Yeah.
But I think like my favorite, like, your end of your shift, like I used to drink these a lot at Doug Fir because they were the cheapest beer there as a Miller High Life. I really like Miller High Life. It's just like a chill, like, all right, I'm gonna have a drink while I'm watching something, or like I just got off work and I need to down something in 15 minutes real quick, and it's just really good. And so I used to, in the summertime, I'd pretend it was a Corona and get a lime with it.
I like Coors Banquet's another beer that's similar to that, where you sit down and drink it. You can enjoy that beer quite a bit, especially if it's warm outside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an aversion to light beers, then the Coors Banquet's a pretty nice lager that's not too heavy.
Yeah. I like the Banquet. I really just don't like light beers, like Miller Lite, Bud Light, any Corona at all, or Corona Light. A lot of these like mass-produced light beers really throw me off. I'm just like, I really don't want anything to do with that. What I do, like some of the other cheap, like I like Hams. Hams is always good. PBR is really hit or miss. Like for some reason, the batches always taste different. Every time I get that beer, it tastes different, which annoys the hell out of me. So like the first time I had a PBR, it was super, super light. And I was like, oh, cool. That's all right. Well, that's a thing, but it's cheap. The second time I had a PBR, I almost threw up from how bitter it was. And I was like, did we get a bad batch or something? I don't know.
Right.
So then I bought another one, and again, horrible tasting, super, super, like not in a good way bitter, like in a really bad way bitter. And and then the next one I had, the fourth PBR I took note of this because it happened in the course of a week. And the fourth PBR I had was super light and crisp. And I was like, what happened? Why is this so different? And then the same thing. Every time I get it, it's like a gamble for me. It's like, am I going to get it super bitter or am I going to get it light, you know? But
right. Well, that's what happens when you make beer in a bathtub.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's like ass, and sometimes it tastes like feet.
You want it to taste like feet or ass? Your choice.
Take your pick.
Oh, man. I don't know if I can do feet. Like feet, like really raunchy feet is bad enough where I'm considering picking that over it's tasting like ass.
Right.
We actually have a tattoos, my dad and I can't try to, hold on, I'm gonna show the camera real quick. So I have this one on my arm, and he's got it on his leg. It's a pipe and a cigar crossing, and the cigar band has an Arizona sunset with a cacti in it, and then there's a blue flower mixed in, all traditional style. The smoke from the pipes kind of twisting up around the cigar. I'm explaining this for all the people listening on audio, or just cut to go to Facebook and cut to what was that, 12 minutes 30 seconds in, and you'll be able to see me showing it off. But yeah,
or Google generic pipe and cigar tattoo.
Very true. Yeah, but it still, I mean, mine still looks great. How does yours look?
It looks great.
Yeah,
as long as I moisturize. Otherwise, it looks kind of ashy. It's not good.
Yeah. Keeping the skin moisturized is a key. But yeah, I don't know. I like Joe's the only. So the guy who tattooed us is named Joe Iannuzzi, and I love that guy. I've been waiting.
Yep.
Yeah, like all of my big tattoos are from him. And just really dope traditional style. I want to have him do everything.
Yeah.
Which is why I haven't really, one of the reasons why I haven't really gotten tattooed super heavily at all since I moved here, even when I initially moved here. And, didn't have a family and, responsibilities. One of the things that kept me from it is I was like, man, I don't know if I trust anyone else other than Joe to tattoo me. Like, because I like his style so much, and like, it's like, oh man, like we're thinking the same shit when you draw shit up, and I'm like, damn it, I have to build a relationship with someone else.
Nah, don't do that. You should just either schedule an appointment every time you come down here,
which I've thought about,
or you should just move down here.
Maybe. Anyways. Yeah. So what have you been up to lately?
Probably the most interesting thing recently is I read a really good book, and that makes me sound probably either really smart or really old. I'm not sure which one. But I read this cool book. called "Turn the Ship Around" recently, and the whole premise, it's like a book on leadership, and the interesting part about it is it's this guy Dave Marquet, who was a submarine captain in the Navy, like back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he took over the worst submarine in the fleet, at least in the Pacific Fleet. They had, they weren't doing well at all in any of their inspections or any of their drills or anything. And he kind of came at leadership from a different perspective. And it was kind of interesting just to hear how he took an organization like a submarine that in the Navy that's very, top-down oriented in terms of leadership. The captain says jump and everyone else says, yes, sir, how high, sir, and shifted it to be more of a, I wouldn't say bottom up, but definitely managed from the middle.
Okay.
From what we would consider in the business world, like middle management, gave a lot of people a lot of authority and responsibility, and it was just an interesting book. And I'm looking at how do I apply that to my work life, but also how do I apply some of the same principles and other things that I do too. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
So what was his management style like? Explain more on like middle up, because sorry, real quick. So like I've read most of Jocko's leadership books. Who he's ex Navy SEAL, and what he talks about a lot is like oh my God, why can't I think of the word? Like a more, it's not the right word, but a more detached style of leadership where you're not micromanaging.
Right.
You step in when you need to step in, but for the most part, you like let your guys do what they're there for and train them and make sure they're good to go, and then let them go. So would you say that's something it sounds kind of similar? I'm just curious.
Yeah,
what he's talking about.
I may have to read Jocko's book next, because I'd be curious how those two interact with each other as far as philosophies. So the book, they talk about, instead of a leader-follower model, encouraging or driving towards a leader-leader model, which if you imagine being on a submarine and you've got enlisted men, and all those enlisted men have various jobs, and then you have and I'm probably going to get some of this wrong because I was not in military service at all, but and then you've got chiefs that oversee crews or groups of men, and then you have officers above those guys who oversee other areas, and then above them you have another layer that kind of oversees the whole department, and then finally you get to like the captain's level. And in a more traditional sense, you would have the captain give an order to the basically the director. The director turns to, and all these guys have real titles like lieutenant, commander, and things like that I can't remember, but turns to the guy who's overseeing, let's say, the engine room or the propulsion department, says, we need to do this, and that guy turns to his crew leaders and says, guys, we need to do this, and that guy turns to his chiefs and says, hey guys, go make the crews do this, and then they go do it. And he shifted that a little bit, or a lot actually, and said, okay, instead of saying from the top down, let's try this from the middle, in the sense that we're going to give the chiefs the latitude and the authority to make some decisions on their own that are within their realm of knowledge and expertise. And people who are in the military will probably agree that like chiefs and staff sergeants and people like that are kind of the guys that make everything run, because they're the guys that are right there with the soldiers, right there making things happen. And then slowly above that, it it becomes less and less connected to the field or to boots on the ground. And so you would in this model you would say, okay, so if you're a chief, we're going to trust that you know what you're doing. You've proven you know what you're doing, otherwise you wouldn't be a chief.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to lean on you to make some decisions. And instead of saying, Captain, what do we do? Or what have you, you would come and say, Captain, I intend to take the right or the starboard engine out of service, and for its maintenance between this time and this time, we're going to do these 15 items. Then we're going to put it back in service, and then I intend to do the port side, the next time, right? And I'm probably messing up all these terms, so if you're in the Navy, I apologize. I'm messing it all up. But the point being that the chief knows that the engine needs to be serviced. Rather than waiting for an order to do that, he takes initiative and says, I'm going to intend to do this. I'm going to talk to my next in command and say, I intend to do this. And then empowering those layers to say, yes, that's a good idea. Please, proceed with that. And the intent was that over time, what the captain, Dave Marquet, found out was that if he just stepped back and waited a little bit, that his people who knew how things were supposed to go would recognize things need to change, and he would jump in and that person would jump in and do it. And they would, hey, we can't wait any longer. We need to do this. And so over time, he developed a culture that didn't wait until they were told what to do. Instead, they were taking responsibility for it, and they were saying, hey, I intend to make this repair, or I intend to do this work. And that whole culture on that boat shifted from that top-down, traditional military type leadership to a, like I said, middle-out leadership, where even though the enlisted men may not know exactly what to do, those chiefs have been in the military for 10 plus years probably, and they know exactly what needs to happen. And they're not waiting for someone to tell them anymore. They're taking that initiative. So that was kind of an interesting thing, and that goes along with how I like to lead as much as I can in my position at work. Is I don't want to be the guy that has to answer every question. I want people that are on the ground, connected with the project, connected with the job, that know what's happening in their particular areas, to see what needs to be done, to take action on it. And then if you want to ask, for some validation before you make it, come to me and say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. Do you have any problem with that? And if I do, then we can talk about it and make an adjustment.
That makes sense. Yeah, that sounds a lot like, and I remembered the word I was trying to say, decentralized command. It sounds a lot like what Jocko basically is talking about too. That's interesting. It's similar. But he also talks a lot about extreme ownership, and I mean, he talks about it in his podcast, and he's like, that means everything: your fitness, your like your personal life. On top of that, it means, this when he's talking about business and leadership, he's like, you need to own the fact, like, to the utmost when you screw up. And so that means not necessarily beating yourself up over it all day, all times, but taking ownership of it and realizing when you make mistakes. Realize when you do put someone in a management position like underneath you, and you think you've given them all the right tools to move forward, and then they fail. And then you have to take ownership and say, hey, maybe I didn't train this person right. Take ownership, redo the training, figure out, like, try again, figure out what's going on. And then if it ends up being that person's fault, then because they're being lazy or whatever it is, regardless of what you've tried, you've at least taken the amount of ownership to try and get it there. And then now you also take the ownership and being like, all right, I own that I screwed up hiring this person, and now I need to let them go and suffer the consequences and let that stuff fall on me. Because that was my choice, my decision. And so it's hard for me, like, because I mean, I run a very small crew, especially in comparison to all the people under you. But so a lot of times I have to leave the other the two guys that I'm directly in charge of, by themselves. So we basically see each other for like an hour or two during crossovers. And so I have to spend and make sure that time of crossover is really, really well spent trying to, be communicative and get the information they need down, etc., and take ownership of that. And then if they fail later on and it's something we talked about already and they should have done fine, then I need to take then like I need to take the ownership in disciplining them for that and talking to them about that, being like, hey, we did this, like, let's do it again. But if it's something I didn't go over or something I missed, or because I didn't train them well enough, then I gotta turn around and go, that's on me. And so I really have to stick to that whole like decentralized command thing, but also doing that extreme ownership, especially there, because I don't see the guys I'm in charge of very often. So you got to make the time count. But so that's always been something that's something new I've had to learn, because in other kitchens, when you're in charge, you're on the line with your guys, and so you're over the like.
It's that Gordon Ramsay top down screaming at you, get it done.
Yeah, and I never liked leading that way unless I needed to in the moment of something, like just taking charge of a situation. But there were some chefs I knew and worked for that took that whole super aggressive approach all the time, which I did not like and did not understand at all. Because I would see, like, especially, okay, so when you're just screaming at people's heads off when it's 2 p.m. and everyone's just doing their mise en place, which means like doing all their prep and getting their stations ready, and you're screaming at people for something that happened last night or for no reason, just slamming stuff around like a lot of these guys do, it's like you're not asserting dominance. You're making everyone scared of you, and you think that's just means they follow you blindly. Well, no, that means you have a lot of burnout and turnover. No one's going to follow you. People are going to leave the establishment, and they're not going to work for you. And you wonder why there's so much turnover in the restaurant industry. It's because of shit like that. And, well, the pay's not very good in comparison to most things, but
no,
there's also that. And so I like to lead from a much more like, hey, if I need to, like, if we're like down in the weeds getting the shit beat out of us and we need someone to just take charge, then yeah, I'll take charge and yeah, I'll bark orders. But I'm not the guy that throws plates, not the guy that will scream at you even if in the middle of that you are doing something wrong. I'll be like, go have a cigarette, like, oh, I can cook faster than you, move, like, get out of my way. But but it was much more like direct ownership of that. So it was really easy to have that extreme ownership because the guy screwed up that dish and he's standing not even a foot away from you. What the hell happened? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, I think anytime you are one of the keys, I think, in leadership is getting the people that work with you. So it all starts with hiring, in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you hire good people that are talented and you understand their areas of strength and weakness, and you hire them knowing that there's areas they're going to need to grow in and areas that they're going to excel in, you can put them in a position to win, because when they win, you win as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were, let's say, for instance, you are talking military, if you have somebody who is skilled at hand-to-hand combat, you're not going to make them your sniper. I mean, you could have both in one person, but it's the sniper's job to be the sniper.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to put him in a position to win. So you're going to put the sniper in a position a high position, so he's got a view, he can back you up and do all the things he's supposed to do. And you put the dude that can hand-to-hand fight and slash and cut with knives and use small handguns and stuff in the entry team. And that only makes sense, but somehow in business, we don't think like that sometimes. And we just we hire somebody for a position. That position has a certain amount of expectation on it, and then we just say, okay, go do it. And I've had some recent experience with this because our in the industry I'm in, so I'm in the construction industry. And I run a specific construction group within a construction company, and we focus on building water treatment plants and wastewater treatment plants, and some of the pump stations and things that go along with those. And that's kind of a niche market. There's not a lot of people that know how to do that work, and the people that do know how to do that work are oftentimes, especially in the economy as it is, are oftentimes snatched up by a big, nationwide or international companies. And so companies like ours, who's local to Arizona, we have to, look a little harder. And so what I've found is that we can find someone who's, for instance, really talented in AutoCAD, and so they can come in and help us make sure that all of our piping is laid out properly and all of our concrete is poured in the right location and all the equipment fits on the concrete pad just right. And they can draw all that up, but they don't really understand how the process of water treatment works, for instance. And so if you start talking to them about, chemical feed systems, or you start talking to them about how a reverse osmosis system works, or some of the intricacies of a clarifier and how you need to add more or less chemical to this process depending on the quality of the water, they have no clue. And I can't expect them to have a clue, And I really can't expect somebody who's done AutoCAD their whole life to know how to do some of the financial reporting and paperwork we've done. They just have never done it. So I hire them knowing that they have a specific skill set, and I do my best to shore them up in those other areas because I want them to be knowledgeable about them. But at the same time, I'm not expecting them to be the rock stars of, financial reporting. I'm expecting them to be the rock stars of using AutoCAD to draw stuff up on the computer so that we don't make mistakes when we're building it. And I'll teach them the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
And that's been a bit of a challenge because you have one person that needs help in the financial area, one person needs help maybe in AutoCAD, they've never done it before, so they need help over there. Somebody else needs help in the how do you actually build this stuff, because maybe they've always done a different type of construction, so this is new type of construction to them. They understand how things get built, but they don't necessarily understand how water treatment systems get put together. And so you can't just go, hey, everybody, let's have a training class on financial reports, because you'll have half the people there already are great at it and don't need the training, and the other half of the people are going to get something from it. So there's you have to work around that, whether you have them cross-train each other or whether you sit down one-on-one and try to train them up a little bit on stuff. But in the end, it's kind of like what you're talking about. If I've trained you and showed you how to do it, you've had the experience, and you spent some time being responsible for it, and you're down the road 6 months or a year, and you're not pulling your weight, then it's a different question. But if you have a circumstance where there's failure, but that failure is because they just don't know and they've never been properly trained, whose fault is that? You hired them knowing they had never done that thing, and you didn't somehow get around to training them on time. So you can't really blame them, and you kind of have to just take it from ground zero and put on your big boy pants and go make some things happen. And it's kind of an interesting process, but the more you can get people competent and trained, the less you have to be in daily control of everything. And I think that's how I like to lead. That's freeing to me. That allows me to focus on the well-being of the group. It allows me to focus on the well-being of the individuals, and I can focus on whether they're, how are they performing? Are they feeling like they're being compensated properly? Are they feeling like they're enjoying their work? Are they getting this stuff done, and we're having success as a company and as a group, and we're rewarding that success and celebrating that success, rather than worrying about if somebody filled out their, whatever, the TPT report or whatever it was from office, like that stuff just, that's not fun to me. I don't want to sit in an office and make sure everybody, brush their teeth and clean their bedrooms. That's not how I want to manage at all. So that does put a little bit more, or a lot more emphasis on the leader to make sure that the people that follow you or that work for you are trained up so they can be leaders too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in kitchens, there's this old and still used style of basically putting everyone on a very specific station and then keeping them there forever and never. So, like, you'll have guys that are grill cooks, and they're like, can you work a saute station? And they're like, no, I work the grill. I've worked the grill for 12 years. And you're like, so you can't saute with pans, like, what are you talking about? How can you only be good at flipping meat? But you see a lot of this at like big commercial stuff as well. More of that, like, all right, we hired this guy as the grill cook, so he's gonna sit here and flip hamburgers and steaks, and that's what he does. And but the in kitchens, though, what we see a lot of is where, at least most kitchens now, I would say, you have your core guys, so on Friday and Saturday when shit's hitting the fan, I know who's going to be on saute, I know who's going to be on fryer, I know who's going to be on pantry, I know who's going to be on the grill, I know who's going to be on the wheel, I know who's going to be expediting. Like, I know exactly who I want where, and to run that night the most efficient. But on the weekdays, so like Sunday through Thursday, when it's not as busy, that's when you have guys switch stations and like kind of learn stuff. And so maybe so for instance, we had this one guy, he's a friend of mine now, Sean. He was the most killer saute cook that walks this planet. He's so good. But on those,
he didn't cook for me when he was at my house.
Oh, I know.
I'm just kidding. He was there at like 3 a.m. So.
I know. Yeah, you guys let him stay at your place when he was on tour, yeah?
Yep.
And he officiated my wedding.
That's true. From backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, those events flip-flopped is what happened. Oh, man. But, yeah, but still then, on the weekdays, we'd often have him switch over to working fryer, which he hated, just so I could get the fry cook on a slow night to be like, hey, this is how you cook with pans, And so even though that guy on the fryer is a killer on the fryer, and when crap hits the fan, I'm gonna put him on the fryer. Now if Sean burns himself, like really bad and has to hop off, right? I now have trained everyone to be able to fill in on that station for, one night or like for an hour or two, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's I'm trying to like equate it to that similarly. But yeah. And so like in the same way where, one of your guys who's really good at something, like, I don't know, I'm done with construction terms, but you have one guy that's really good at digging holes, Yeah. And maybe you show that guy like, hey, like whoever's in charge of everyone digging the hole, you show that guy like, hey, this is all the other things that we're doing. And then, and then the guy who's in charge of it, putting in the pipe, that guy doesn't necessarily have to know how to, run a crane, you know what I mean? But he's still like, but you still have taught him like, hey, the cranes do this. This is the rules of walking around the crane and shit like that. And so just making everyone like aware of everything around them and all the intricate parts of it, and not solely only focus on the one thing you do, because then you also get burnout too.
Right.
I mean, I don't know with construction, but sometimes when you're cooking and one of your guys is just burnt the hell out of cooking on fryer, you know what I mean? And you can just tell he's just dying over there just because he's a sinking ship because he's so annoyed and fed up with what he has to do because he's been doing it every Friday for a month. You'll just be like, hey, pantry fryer switch. So now that guy who was stuck looking at brown liquid, all night now gets to look at salads and like do a whole different ticket system. And now he has to restart his brain and go forward again. And so, I don't know if that equates at all to construction in any way, but
yeah, it totally does. And you can, whether it be out in the field with the crews, we'll have equipment operators, and it's kind of interesting because you'll have a guy who is really great at, let's say, running a track hoe. With, for those who don't know, it's the big tracked excavator. It's got a big arm on it, and it just, it's there for digging holes. So that excavator or track hoe, you'll have guys that are track hoe operators. That's what they do. And there's some guys that are like, hey, can you jump in that loader? Which a loader is basically a bulldozer. If you've seen a bulldozer, it's similar to a bulldozer, but it's got rubber tires on it, and the bucket tips so you can pick stuff up and dump it in a dump truck. That's why it's called a loader, because it picks the dirt up and you can load a truck with it, a dump truck. And so you'll say even like, hey, can you jump in that loader and move it? It's kind of in the way. And they'll look at you like you're crazy because they're like, no, I'm a track hoe operator. And you're kind of going, it's all big yellow equipment, man. Just jump in it and move it.
Right.
It drives just like your car pretty much. Just get in and move it. And then you'll have other guys that are like, what we call universal operators. And those guys kind of do a little bit of everything. And they may not be the best at everything, but they're good at everything, and they can be trusted to do work. And universal operators typically are going to make a little bit more money than a track hoe or excavator operator, or if all you can do is sit on a loader or a bulldozer and push dirt around, then that's great, and we need you. But it makes you a little bit less valuable than if I could put you on a job where you could do a little bit of everything. And but you have some people that just don't want to do anything else. It's kind of funny because you mentioned a crane. Crane operators are notoriously known to say, hey, I'm a crane operator and I don't do anything else. So if you're using a crane on site and you've got an operator running that piece of equipment, if there's nothing for the crane to do for an hour, some operators, a very few of them, but a few operators will jump off the crane and help out with something else. But most crane operators are known to just, pull out the novel they've been reading and read it for an hour while you're installing something, and then when you need them, they set the novel down and they operate their crane again. And it's interesting, kind of the different ways that people operate and people kind of function, and a lot of it also depends on the size of company you're working for, and it depends on the culture of that company, and so many other things. Just like kitchens, you have different cultures. You have the same thing on different crews and on different even within the company, and then each company has its own culture about how we do things. And but the big thing in my mind is if you can get that crane operator to understand the importance of being able to run several other pieces of equipment, he's now more valuable, not just to the company, but he's more valuable to himself, if you ask me, because he's got a broader knowledge base. And let's just say he woke up tomorrow and no one needed a crane, he could still go out and run a different piece of equipment that is needed.
Yeah.
And that's valuable,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's one of the quick ways in a kitchen you can move up is like just volunteer to be on every station and like push to get on the next hardest station and the next hardest station. Typically you're gonna start a guy on like pantry or fryer where you're making salads or frying French fries. You know what I mean? Like nothing too crazy or anything. But usually your fryer guy will go to pantry next because it's more things to remember. And a little more like hand-eye coordination work and stuff. And it's also one of the fastest paced. Fryer, you're fast paced as well, but you are also working in much bigger batches. So like you can load up, 4 or 5 orders, and be ready to go. Because there's only several things that the whole line is going to need from you consistently on dishes. So you only have like 5 or 6 things total to do. And you can batch them out. Whereas pantry, you might have, 2 of this salad and 3 of this salad and 1 of that salad. Well, you can't mix all of those together. So now you have to get 3 bowls, 3 different sizes, mixing them together, portion them out properly, put on the toppings on, et cetera, boom, boom, boom. Oh, by the way, a dessert just rang in the middle of you doing that. So now you have to stop everything you're doing and put a dessert out really quick and then get back on it. So you just have to be much more aware and more fast paced. But the benefit of pantry is, and the reason it's easier than the other stations other than fryer, is because you're working with quick order things. So there's very few, even though it's more hands-on, it's all right there. And then as soon as you're done touching it, it's done. So you're talking about real quick fire times on a salad. Whereas saute, which would be the hardest. So let's say you go to grill now. Grill is similar to fryer because you're working with like 5 things. And the only difference is that everything has to be temped. And so you have to be constantly touching things. And so every single one is going to be different. Every single steak you get, every single burger you get is going to be a different temperature. And so you have to keep way harder track on those things that you're big batching, and still be very precise about what temperatures you're giving to the wheel cook, who's going to be plating everything. But then I would say after that is where you move to saute. And saute is like gold star. You're the shit. You made it, because you're getting blasted with orders because every entree is going to have something from you on it, whether it's a side or finishing steaks or searing short rib, whatever it is. You got 6 burners to work with, and you got 12 orders on the board all the time. So like you got to figure that out, bro. Again, with where you're talking about similar to taking those pantry high-end eye skills, you're constantly dipping into your low boy, which is it's a general term for fridges that open below the waist. But usually saute will have one that pulls out like a drawer. Sometimes they'll just leave it open for service because they're just pulling stuff in and out of it all the time, throwing it in pans. But then on top of that, you have all the work of the grill guy too, because everything's going to be a different temperature. And so the sides for this dish are not going to cook the same as the sides for that dish. And this pan-seared steak that I'm doing is going to take a lot longer than this tilapia or the bass or whatever, So you have to add the timing and temperature and super watchful eyes of the grill with the really fast hand-eye coordination of being in the pantry. And then once you're past that, then you usually will get promoted to a lead or a sous chef or something like that. And that's when you move to what the wheel cook does, which is essentially finish off items, plating everything, keeping track of everyone in the kitchen, making sure everyone's, being the leader in the kitchen. And then usually the only other kitchen person you'd have on in that specific setup that I was in would be maybe an expediter on the other end. And that would either be like chef or the lead line cook and chefs in there, or running wheel position, but someone who just can see and knows from, just by looking at the dish, and to be like, hey, this is wrong. And so they're basically like a second pair of eyes helping you run the wheel and taking the conversation to front of house. And so you usually want someone pretty knowledgeable in the kitchen, or at least in previous kitchens doing that. But
yeah. So all that, folks, so you know what it takes to get your food out.
Yeah. All of that for like $1 above minimum wage. Man, cooks get shit on all the time, but man, shout out to cooks. It's a hard job, and we do not get paid enough
for real
to do it.
Well, it's funny because it's kind of like I'm trying to think of an equivalent here, but I guess it's kind of like the police. All right, so hear me out. So
yeah,
if you're at a restaurant, the food comes out amazing. You say, "Man, that was good food. We're gonna come back to this restaurant."
Yeah.
If the food comes out and it sucks, you're like, "What the hell was that cook smoking?" Who is this guy?
From experience, probably crack or marijuana. It's 50-50.
Or both.
Or both at the same time. Yes.
I gotta level myself out, get some uppers and some downs.
On the real, I know. I've heard of people lacing their weed with certain things. Anyways, continue.
Anyway, no, I was just saying it's like a cop. You don't hear much about them until they totally screw up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably true of a lot of professions, that you just don't know that person is out there. You don't think about them until they're either in your way or didn't deliver on some, it's kind of like, so when we build water treatment plants, most people don't even know where the water treatment plant is. But if their water comes out of their faucet brown, someone's going to jail, It's like, and there's a reason why the Flint, Michigan people, went to jail. And it's because when you're a water treatment operator or a wastewater treatment operator, so either treating potable water for drinking or treating sewage for whatever they're going to do with it. Sometimes they recharge it into the aquifers. Sometimes they use reclaimed water on golf courses and stuff like that. But those operating licenses come with a legal requirement because it's public health. And so when things go south or people make decisions that aren't in line with public health, people go to jail. And they saw that, we saw that in Flint, Michigan. And we see that other places. And if you're, one of the things that I always stress to my staff is that, hey, the owner, the people we're doing this work for, these people have more than just having a nice plant that operates well at stake. These operators in positions of leadership at the plant have their careers to think of, and they also have their freedom to think of. And the Flint, Michigan's the perfect example of a group of administration officials and water treatment plant operators that made a decision and then didn't rectify that decision quick enough. And because they waited 18 months plus to do anything about the problem they've created, they're dealing with the ramifications now. So,
man, talking about being forced to take extreme ownership.
Right. Oh yeah.
I mean, you have to, because it literally all falls on you. Like.
Right. And it's probably similar to like Jocko's book. I haven't read it, but it sounds like what you're talking about, where you have to take a bit of a risk as a leader to let other people lead as well. The leaders that are under you, how do you let them lead and then be okay with that? You have to be willing to take a little bit of a risk and trust in the effort, the training, the knowledge, the expertise that you hired people or that you have people on your team for, And then, that exists in a lot of work too.
Yeah, totally. So we're coming up on time. So I had a couple questions I wanted to ask you. One, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
So the answer is not really, but kind of.
Okay.
So it's more about timing, I guess. It kind of timed itself out to New Year's, but it really isn't a New Year's resolution per se. I'm, as you know, I'm what I would like to call a heavy athlete. Not just because I am heavy and semi-athletic, but because I compete in Scottish Highland Games, and all of that's considered heavy athletics. Throwing stones and weights and the caber, which is the telephone pole thing that everyone kind of recognizes as a Scottish game. But also because at one point at the end of the year, I was pushing just over 300 pounds, and that's like as big as I've ever been or want to be. So my resolution really is to get in a little bit in better shape, and to just not be a slave to what tastes good and what feels good, but really think about the long-term effects on my health. So your mom and I have been doing a program recently that helps us, moderate our calories really well, and I'm down like 13 pounds or so since the beginning of the year over the last 3-4 weeks, and it's nice because I'm really busy at work, so I don't have to just run through fast food. I can just eat the meals that I have prepared for me, and so that's probably my biggest resolution, I guess, if you want to call it that, is just to get all that under control.
That sounds like a good resolution.
Yeah.
Anything else other than that before we go on about that? Because I have some things I want to say.
No, not really.
No. See, so
drink more beer, smoke more cigars. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I mean, the beer thing might not help with your weight loss goals, but
I wanna try cocaine this year.
You want to try cocaine this year?
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
If you listen to this and you work for my company, I'm just joking.
What company? I'm just kidding.
The company that shall not be named.
That's good. Yeah. Well, so my fitness one is to lose another 20 pounds this year.
Yeah.
I'm already seeing a lot of results from working out and eating a little better. And so I'm just trying to continue that, but I'm also setting a really low goal because I'm not trying to kill myself either,
Right.
And I'm one of those people that sometimes, especially with competitions, where if I set a goal for myself, I'm gonna be really bummed out if I don't hit that goal, and I'm gonna give everything I got to get that goal. And so I just don't want to become a fully obsessed meathead. Right. So I could have a way more specific lower goal, but I will, if I set that goal, post it out on social media and shit, I will be all over that, and I don't want to do that. And so
wait a second, Caleb, you an addictive personality? I can't.
Yeah, right. Well, and speaking of addictions, that's another thing that I said by the end of the year I want to at least start to quit smoking.
Right.
And so, such a goal. At some point, by the end of this year, I want to have tried at least to quit smoking. And then, Yeah, and then the last one that I have for the year is just trying to read or listen to a book that is fiction once a month. Um, just because I find myself too much reading
Yep.
books on theology and philosophy and history, which is
Yep.
all fun, but then I get super burnt out on it. So, and I'm really lacking in the fiction department as far as knowing
Yeah.
any books or any good authors or whatever. So, Hannah's laughing at me right now, but, and so I'm like, all right, like, let's do it. And so,
So are you reading physical books or doing audiobooks?
both. So I have this app called Libby on my phone, which connects to the Multnomah County Library, which is my library. So anything that they have on digital file, which is usually like 20 copies of everything, you can rent out books and audiobooks. So like I listened to last month before I started this thing. Oh my gosh, is it The End of the World is what the book's called? No, that's End of the World with Josh Clark. Oh my gosh, Dan Carlin's book.
Oh, okay.
That's why he was on a podcast hiatus for so long, because he was writing a book.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he has a new book. You should listen to it. Just look it up.
I will.
Yeah, it's all about like, he got inspired by that World War II or World War I podcast he did, where he was talking about the apocalypse.
Oh yeah, that was
Like
nuts.
yeah, and so the World War one, yeah, it was called Apocalypse or whatever.
16-hour podcast all on World War I. That was pretty crazy.
Yeah, 16 hours. Yep. Yeah, and so that inspired him. So he goes into like almost that much detail into a bunch of atrocities and near apocalypses. And so like one of the things he talks about is World War One, but he also talks about like the Cold War and the Black Plague, like all these things that were Armageddon, I think is what that series is called. But
right.
Yeah, he talks about like all the Armageddon moments in history. It's pretty good. But anyways, oh man, I'm blanking on the name of the book that I read this month. But I already decided what I'm going to read this coming month, which is I'm going to try and read all of the short stories from Edgar Allan Poe again.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I started reading. Now I have a physical copy of everything Edgar Allan Poe did.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think you guys got me that a while ago. Yeah, so I still have that. So this next month I'm going to read that, but I also need to find something else to listen to at least, because I have already technically read all of that. I just don't remember it. So trying to read new things.
What kind of fiction do you like?
I like war fiction. About like, like I like westerns. I like all these, like oh my god, what's that guy's name? Sean Purnell, the guy that's running for Congress, wherever the fuck he is. He's a really big Trump supporter, which I don't really like, but his books are good. So he's got a couple. I think they're. Oh man, I'm blanking on the damn name of it, but it's like a special ops spy novel kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I like those kind of books. And the one I just read is I don't remember the author, but it's Our Man in Havana.
Okay.
Which is it's basically about it's a satirical novel on the like right before the Cold War, when American and British agents were all over Cuba. And basically the author had found out about some dumb shit that that MI6 had done that had just blown up in their faces, and he thought it was hilarious, so he wrote a book like being satire and over dramatizing what happened. But essentially it's this guy, he sells vacuums in Havana, and that's like his business. And so in order to get extra money, he makes up all these fake agents and starts working for MI6. And sending them all this false information. Like he's sending them pictures or hand drawings of vacuum parts, saying that he saw them like they're talking about a vacuum hose or whatever, and so he like puts the dimensions of the vacuum hose like the size of a football field and sends it off to MI6, and everyone at MI6 is like, oh my gosh, they're building something huge in these woods. And the funny part about the book is they are in reality, but the guy's just sending them fake crap, and he doesn't actually know anybody. He's just collecting a check from MI6.
Nice.
Yeah, and then they send over someone to help him, and there's all this other shenanigans. But it's so I don't know. I like them funny, I guess, and I like them like campy war novels. But
okay, so there's an author, W.E.B. Griffin, and if you I don't remember what W.E.B. stands for, but W.E.B. Griffin's probably written, I'm going to guess just off the top of my head here and say like 30 plus books, all about war. Most of them, a lot of them anyway, revolve around World War II, and they're all historical fiction. So there's my favorite series of his is the Honor Bound series. And basically it takes place at the end of World War II, and it's in Argentina, and like all these, these Nazis are coming and they're hiding out in Argentina. At the end of the war, they're trying to transfer all their wealth and all their treasure to Argentina, and it's kind of it's not really a war novel as much as a spy novel, but it's set in this time period where there's these and I kind of like it because it's like the 1940s and 50s where, they all sit around smoking cigars, drinking scotch, and, shooting with Tommy guns or whatever. And, but the whole series is about this group of people who are basically down in Argentina trying to capture Nazis that are basically realizing that the war is coming to an end. They're going to lose, and we've got to do something to capture these guys before they disappear. And the interesting part about it, I think, is that like there was a series on, I think, History Channel that was like Finding Hitler or something like that, and it was basically all about how all these Nazis, including some people believe Hitler didn't kill himself, but he snuck away to South America and hid out. And so there's these huge German communities down in South America, and they're still there, obviously, because they've been there since the 20s, 30s, and 40s. But a lot of them came over in the 40s. Some people fleeing Nazi Germany, and some people basically fleeing capture from the Allies. So anyway, it's a cool spy series, and there's probably 7 or 8 books in that series, and it kind of keeps the same characters from story to story, and they're really fun. So you might check that out if you like historical fiction. It's pretty good.
I wrote it down. So the
other one I would say everybody ought to read is a story called A Gentleman in Moscow. And that book is probably, if not the best, it's one of the best fiction novels I've ever read. I can't think. Amor Tolls is the author's name, and that whole book is about this guy who was sort of a aristocrat kind of guy, right around the time of the Bolshevik Revolution. But he had written this poem that kind of saved his life. He had written this poem when he was young, and all these revolutionaries had used this poem as like inspiration, and so they were like, okay, so you're this guy we want to rebel against because you're part of the aristocratic elite, but you wrote this poem that we all rallied around. So instead of killing you like we did everybody else, we're going to just put you in this hotel in house arrest and you can never leave. And so the whole story takes place in this one hotel in Moscow, and he's got to, figure out how to function and operate. And as the world changes around him, he's sort of like stuck in this one place. But really, really well written. some really just amazing like relationships and character development in that book. So that's another fun one I always recommend to anybody who wants to read a good fiction novel.
Heard, I wrote that one down too. All right, well, we're out of time here today.
What? We didn't even talk about impeachment? Oh, shoot.
I know. Well, let's talk about it for a second, actually. I have control. I have the power of time. So, I don't know about you, but I used to be really into following all of this shit really, really closely. And basically, as soon as the articles, or as soon as it passed in the House, I was like, okay, I don't really care anymore. Like it was partially boredom, but also partially being fed up with it, and on top of that, in my heart of hearts, knowing like nothing's gonna happen. At least so I thought, basically, until today I got a little jump, but I was just like, listen, the full Republican Senate's not going to kick out, a sitting Republican president. There's just no way in hell they're going to do that. On top of that, they don't even think that what he did, which I don't necessarily know for sure, but they're not even sure what he did qualifies as a high crime or misdemeanor.
Right.
And so it's interesting because, so anyways, nothing really big happened until today or yesterday. John Bolton, who is the former national security advisor, wrote a book, and some of the Democrats got a transcript of it or something. I don't think he's actually released the book yet, but apparently in the book it basically says that Trump did do exactly what he's saying that he did. So Trump is saying like, hey, I didn't do a quid pro quo, and the senators are basically saying, hey, even if he did, it's still not a problem. And so the news has been like this, the fact that he says it is a quid pro quo, like, may mean that he'll testify and we'll actually have witnesses and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's interesting and all, but their whole argument is that it doesn't even qualify. So it doesn't matter if it is quid pro quo. And
so go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's fine. And so all I was going to say is, so like, does it really matter? Probably not. You know what I mean? Sure, we might hear witnesses, but they'll be like, cool, we did quid pro quo, which doesn't qualify, as we already have fully stated before, to us. So whatever, but anyways.
Right. So I was just going to add, and I haven't been super, I'm not like listening to it all day. I'm not really following it super closely. I am trying to stay up to date and informed with what's happening. But I saw this interesting article and the other day, and it basically was recounting Alexander Hamilton's view of impeachment from the Federalist Papers. And I will be to admit I have not read the Federalist Papers for myself. So, someone can argue or tell me I'm wrong. But the interesting part of the article was basically that, and they used some quotes from Alexander Hamilton, and he was talking about how, the term high crimes and misdemeanors is a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit of a misnomer, because the act of impeachment is necessarily separate from a traditional trial that you would have in a court, and and by definition, it needs to have different rules. And you have to be careful if you were to say this is a courtroom, quote unquote, because there are the rules for what is legal and not legal don't apply directly to the impeachment question, whether it be this president or any other president.
Yeah.
And obviously, Alexander Hamilton, when he's writing this stuff, can't see into the future. But it was kind of an interesting article, and I thought to myself, man, I really need to go read those Federalist Papers. And obviously, I haven't done that yet, but that's something that I think would be interesting to see how the founding fathers viewed this idea of high crimes and misdemeanors. Are we talking about actual misdemeanors as it relates to a legal definition, or is that a term that was used to basically explain what we're talking about when someone or a president does something that's just not acceptable or in line with presidential expectations, I guess. And so it was just kind of an interesting thing. And I like I said, I'm not prepared to get into a deep conversation on it because I haven't really read that, but it was interesting thought. And I think it'd be worthwhile to see what some of the founding fathers thought about the idea of impeachment and how it would play out in, even looking back in history. How does that play out with Nixon, or how does that play out with Bill Clinton? And noting that Nixon resigned before he could be removed from office, and noting that Bill Clinton was never voted out of office, or they never voted for removal because they thought that was worse for the country than leaving him in place, even though he was impeached. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, the term impeachment seems like it means you're out on your ear kind of thing. But
yeah.
In reality, it's not that cut and dry, not that simple. So the whole process is interesting to me, and if I had a little more time, I'd probably know more about it and be better versed in the conversation. But yeah.
You're already more versed in the conversation with that. I mean, I talked for a minute, and you went on for like 6. I'm teasing you. Yeah. So, do you know if when Hamilton's talking in the Federalist Papers, is it written as a modern day hip hop rap opera?
I don't think it is. No, but
damn.
I do have the soundtrack to Hamilton on my phone.
Dude, I like listening to it sometimes. I've never seen it, but I like listening to it.
I've never seen it either, but the soundtrack is great.
Yeah, I've been meaning to try and find it on YouTube or something and watch it, but anyways, yeah, I wrote that down. I need to read the Federalist Papers too.
There you go. I don't know if they're on audiobook, but maybe we'll get lucky.
What?
I said I don't know if they're on audiobook, but maybe we'll get lucky. Either way, I don't think they were read by the
author. No, probably not. However, whoever did read it was friends with their younger brother.
Say that again.
I said. However, whoever does read it was probably friends with their younger brothers. It's some old dude being like, and he said, under the summer.
I hope not. It's unlistenable if that's the case.
And by the way, your diabetes supplies may be covered. In the 3.5 years it took me to read this book, I got diabetes, and you can too. Anyways. All right. I want to talk to you more about Highland Games next time, okay?
Okay.
All right. Everyone say bye to my dad. Bye, Dad. Thanks for coming on. I love you.
Love you too. I was going to tell you that you got to be careful. We're going to have to start arguing, or you're going to have to change the name of this.
I know. Well, okay. So how about this? We'll start off. We'll start off next podcast talking about Highland Games, and then so we have a month to. All right. Here we go.
We got to come up with an argument.
No, I already have one.
Oh,
I already have a good one that we can have. Okay. So we have a month to prepare. No, I'm still on live. It doesn't matter. I need the YouTube video. I don't care if anyone's watching. Hi, no one watching. I don't give a fuck. I get 8 times more listens on the podcast app, motherfuckers. I don't care about your live. Anyways, I'm just kidding. I love you all. Please stay for the lives. Hang out. Comment. Subscribe. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Get it all. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, the argument that we're going to have. Okay. So we'll consider it more of a debate. I'm sure we'll get heated at some points. We have a whole month to prepare. Both of us are busy people, so we're not expecting like full on like mind blown. Basically just get each other up to speed on your argument for liberalism over my argument for socialism and vice versa.
All right.
We have the whole month to prepare. And the next Fuck You Dad will be us debating each other on which one's better.
All right. I like it.
Everyone prepared for me to get owned. And not because it's not better, but because I'm not as good as a talker as you are. You're still wrong.
That just comes from like 30 plus years of bullshit in everybody.
Right? Yeah. I would say that's basically where libertarians come from.
Oh, wow. Look out. All right.
All right.
All right.
I love you.
Love you too, man. Talk to you later.
Yep. See ya. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Thanks for sticking in there for a little longer. I thought it was worth it. Did you get the thing prepared for the shares? Like I said at the beginning?
You did not say that.
I did. Everyone, it is recorded. I said we were going to do shares at the end. Maybe I didn't tell you to do that.
You didn't say that at all.
I did say that, but I don't think I actually told you to get it ready.
Yeah, you definitely didn't talk to me about it.
All right. Well, anyways, Jose and Randy, neither of you have claimed your sticker yet. So hit us up. Let's see. Do I have anything else to talk about? Nope. All right. Deuces.